Buddy, buddy, boo. The This House podcast with Liz Barker, and today we're in a very special garden.
I'm Lucy Copeman, and I run Howbury Farm Flowers, and today we are in the walled garden at Howbury, which is a house just outside, just in Bedfordshire. And we're sitting in the walled garden. It's the most glorious day in April. A bit too hot, really. It's not meant to be this hot at this time of the year. And it has an upside and a downside on a floristry front, so I'm having to, on a flower growing front even, so I'm having to irrigate like crazy at the moment, so we've had such little rain.
Hi, so I'm Cissy Bullock, and I am a florist, and I set up Wild Stems, which is a floral design studio just outside Cambridge. But also together we set up the School of Sustainable Floristry, which is located here on the flower farm at Howbury Farm Flowers.
Lovely. So thanks so much for inviting me here today. And I know that Howbury Hall is open to the public, or the gardens are. Is that right, Lucy?
Only for sort of special occasions, so we open it for the NGS and for the Red Cross, probably a couple of times a year.
Lovely. Now, I've had a little bit of a look around, and obviously you've showed me your wonderful Victorian conservatory. Is that what you call it?
Greenhouse.
Greenhouse. Yeah. Which is just full of seedlings and things growing, which is amazing. So talk to me first about, how long have you lived here, and what's the history of the hall, Lucy? What's your...
So I have lived here for 20 years, and the history of the house, there's been a house here since the 1500s, and the house burnt down to the ground in about 1846. There was a small area left, and it was rebuilt by 1849, so there were bees in a chimney, and somebody was brought in to smoke out the bees and burnt the house down. So most of the house as it stands now is from 1849, but there's a small part that is older than that. And the walled garden, I would say, is probably the most historic part of the house. This is late Victorian. We've got the original greenhouse, as you could see earlier, is stuffed to the gunnels, as you saw, with seedlings and plants that we're going to be starting to plant out right now, this afternoon, and have already. Yeah.
So tell me how the floristry side of the house started, because that wasn't originally your plan when you moved in, was it?
Not at all. In fact, I don't have a background in horticulture at all. So I moved here. I was working in financial PR in London, and had children, and realised that the two were not going to work well together. So I just had a rethink, and it was just serendipity. I took a floristry course and got chatting to the floristry tutor, who asked me to grow her some dahlias because she couldn't get good imported dahlias. And it was really that point that I decided that I'd start growing flowers, and realised that British flowers and growing in an ecological and a sustainable way was just a really fantastic area, an exciting area.
But it wasn't really something that we did here.
No, I mean, I think there will always have been flowers grown in this walled garden for the house. And I believe, so I'm really putting the walled garden back to what it would have been used for. I mean, I'm not sure they would have grown on this scale, but certainly we've got vegetables on one part of the garden and flowers on the other. But certainly vegetables and soft fruits were grown here. And it's fantastic, the space, because the walls give it a degree of protection. I believe that it's 2 degrees warmer, as you might feel now, inside the walled garden. Protects from wildlife, deer,
Frost.
Rabbits, frost. So lots of benefits.
Brilliant. Well, Cissy, let's bring you in and tell me about what you do, because you've got a wonderful business, Wild Stems. Tell me about your background and how you came to be involved.
So I also didn't start off as a florist. I actually, my background is China, and I moved to China after my degree and worked in kind of sustainability strategy, like market entry and government relations, and then latterly carbon trading, obviously. And then met my husband in Beijing, and we moved to Singapore. And then after 5 years in Singapore, I fell pregnant and moved back to the UK with twins, or pregnant with twins. And one of the things that I'd sort of had been in the back of my mind was that I was really drawn to businesses that had been set up by a founder that had a passion, they had a craft, and these businesses had grown organically, excuse the pun, off the back of what they were really passionate about, as opposed to, you know, just I'm going to set up a business and fundraise loads of money and, you know, all that kind of thing. And the thing that I kept coming back to was that I don't have a craft. And everyone was like, yeah, but you speak Chinese. And I was like, yeah, but what am I going to do with that? I don't want to be a translator. So I was really kind of like, in the back of my mind, I had my eye on the radar, like I was trying to find what my craft was. And then we moved back to the UK, and I'd lived in Singapore, which didn't have any seasons. I mean, it does, but it just has a very hot tropical season all year round. And my, you know, temperate Northern European self actually really struggled with that. I didn't think that was going to be a thing at all, but I really got back to England, or actually I was living in Edinburgh, got back to the UK, and I just really wanted to be in tune with the seasons. I was actually, more than anything, was craving autumn and spring, like the transitions, rather than like summer or winter. I just really wanted that kind of process of going through the seasons. And anyway, I stumbled across this floristry course, and it really was one of those like lightning bolt moments, and I just was like, that's what I'm going to do. That's my craft. My husband thought I was absolutely mad. He's like, what? I was like, yeah, bear with me, because we've got 2 young kids, and then I can build the business alongside, and you know, so he kind of indulged me. But what I realized really quickly was that I was naturally drawn to kind of the wilder aesthetic, and I couldn't replicate it with flowers that I was getting at the wholesaler. Everything that I kind of was being drawn to on Instagram, or, you know, like Pinterest or whatever, when I tried to create designs, something was jarring. I couldn't make it work. And I realized really quickly that it was that I wanted to work with locally grown flowers, that there's a totally, from like a medium perspective, they are in a completely different class. They are really full of movement and vitality and scent in a way that imported flowers just aren't. One of my friends that's a florist just said, you know, I'm not as hardcore as you, Cissy. I don't say I never import flowers, but she said, I never import flowers because working with imported flowers is much harder to make them look nice. So it actually takes me longer to work them into my designs than if I just worked with locally grown flowers. So, you know, it's kind of both a sustainability kind of values driven thing, but also a design driven thing. I just think they're the best medium to work with. So yeah, so Wild Stems was born, and I don't have a shop at all. It's just a wedding, it's an event studio, and yeah, I only work with locally grown flowers, no matter what the season is, which means that it doesn't always meet what people have a vision of in terms of what they expect from floristry, but that's kind of the whole point. And what it does is it really connects every event and the flowers to what is actually happening outside and in and of that moment, which personally is what makes them so much more special.
Yeah, I mean, just going by your Instagram is beautiful. The things you manage to create are just, yeah, they're works of art. I mean, there's some really lovely, I mean, I will put your Instagram page on, and obviously the website, and it just, yeah, I think it's just really inspiring actually what you, and it doesn't matter what season it is, you, like you say, it creates a totally different look, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Depending on what's out there.
But I feel like that's the point. I mean, like that's the bit that doesn't ever sort of make sense to me. Like, if it's winter, it wants to feel like winter. You don't want a whole load of roses in winter. And you know, people talk about, when they talk about flowers, they're like, oh, but they're so ephemeral, you know, they don't last. Well, actually, I think that flowers, when done seasonally in this way, are the best souvenir, because the flowers of the moment, they may die, but every year they come back. And I get messages from my clients saying, oh, my flowers have just come up in the hedgerows, or, you know, my snowdrops have come up in the garden, or whatever it is that was the flower that we used for their event, comes back every year. And so it's the ultimate souvenir. And I just think, yeah, it really,
I think that's really lovely.
yeah, it really connects people to actually nature and what's happening. So.
Yeah. So guys, how did you end up working together? What was the culmination? What brought you
So I got a phone call in lockdown from Cissy saying, have you got any dahlias? I phoned all these other flower farmers and they've just stopped growing. I actually hadn't stopped growing because I was busier than ever before, because people living locally, and I have a sort of subscription scheme, they wanted flowers in lockdown. They weren't spending money. It was a beautiful thing to have delivered to their doorstep. Remotely, I asked them to leave a bucket outside, on their doorstep, and I just dropped the flowers in every week. So that was actually a really busy time for me, which was great. And I had a call from Cissy, seeing if I had dahlias, and she came and had a look, and the rest is history.
Yeah. And then I mean, frankly, her dahlias were next level, and I took them down to this wedding for only 15 people because it was, phase 2 of the COVID regulations. But they were, they were beautiful, really incredible quality, incredible varieties, and I got a view of what this incredible space was, and sort of in the back of my mind, what had been ticking over was a couple of things. One was that people always said, oh, British flowers don't last as long. It was kind of one of the refrains I kept hearing from other florists. And I was like, well, that's not true. You're just not being taught how to use them, because you have to use them differently. So that was in the back of my mind. And then another, someone had got in touch with me because she was going to become a florist, and she was, having conversations, just networking to understand what it was like and what kind of area of work she might be doing. And I then saw that she went into this floristry training school, and I sort of followed her on Instagram, and I could see that she was producing all of this stuff with like really imported flowers with floral foam and all these things, and I just thought, I don't get it. Like, it doesn't align with your values and your desire, like your aesthetic. I don't understand why you've chosen to go and learn in that way. So I Googled, and I was like, oh, because you can't actually learn in any other way, which like blew my mind. And then I turned up on Lucy's doorstep, and I was like, Lucy, I've got an idea. And I just thought, actually, somebody needs to change. Like, floristry training is wildly outdated, and somebody needs to change it. And you actually need to connect florists to their medium. You need to see how they're grown, and understand what's available at different times of year, and how you design according to different times of year. And so yeah, that was it.
But sadly, floristry is still being taught in this way with floral foam, which you cannot believe. Single-use plastic leaches chemicals into the
soil, waterways.
It's horrific stuff. It really, really is. It's not healthy in any way, and that it's still being taught with is unbelievable. Because it's really not difficult not to use it.
Right, so tell me what you do here. Tell me exactly what goes on, what people can come and learn.
So we teach floristry to amateurs, flower lovers, people that have gardens that want to know what they can cut and bring into their own home, all the way through to florists or people that want to be florists professionally. So people that want to train for the very first time. And we thought, great, let's get them and train them at the beginning without having to unlearn all the bad stuff. Let's get them in and set them off on the
it is a real
mix,
just as you say, of people that just love flowers and want to be immersed. So we have one fantastic student at the moment she's an air hostess, and she just wants to do something totally different and be at one, in nature,
be grounded.
Making beautiful things.
So
in a beautiful environment.
She comes when she's not flying.
Yeah,
comes on our workshops.
She's asked us to come and help you in the garden, and I said yes, of course. How lovely.
So what does the workshop or the courses involve? How does it work?
So we've got lots of different workshops on offer. We've got half day, full day of quite basic, from coming to the garden to vase workshops, where you walk around, see what's growing, cut a bucket of flowers, and then learn how to arrange them beautifully and in a very sort of Cissy artistic style.
And seed to centerpiece, so even taking it further back, where you can literally spend time in the greenhouses with Lucy, sowing your seeds and understanding kind of the actual growing process. And then
sowing the seeds, going away with a seed tray full of different flowers, and then going and working with Cissy to create the arrangement so it really comes full circle, which is
very satisfying,
very popular.
Yeah,
and
really
it is. And then there's follow up. So we've had, we get questions from people afterwards, and they want tips and advice, and we're really happy to speak to them on the phone and talk to them about
and then on the kind of professional side, we run like the sort of career change course, I guess, for want of a better description. So people that are interested in kind of moving into floristry as a potential career, and that again, I think that's pre-revolutionary, dare I say it, but it basically it's a year-long course, and so you come and you can start in spring, summer or autumn, and you come and spend time obviously within the walled garden and also in the flower barn with me, learning how to be a florist basically, but working seasonally and sustainably.
So it's learning everything from bridal bouquets, funeral flowers, installations,
gift bouquets.
But it's coming the important thing is it's coming in every season, because the flowers are different in every season, obviously, but they behave differently. So you have to condition them in different ways. It's teaching them at what point to cut. So in terms of the cut flowers in the garden, I'll cut at a different point, whether it's for a bouquet or whether it's for a wedding, because for a wedding I want the flower to be at its most mature and voluptuous, whereas for a bouquet I want vase life. So there's lots of things to learn about.
And so what do you grow here, Lucy? Tell me about the different varieties of flowers during the seasons.
So my season tends to start at the end of March, and I start with tulips. I put 6,500 in this year, and they're all interesting varieties, the varieties that you don't see in the supermarket. So they're viridiflora variety, fringed varieties, parrots, doubles, they're all really, really, well, I think they're gorgeous.
Painterly.
So I start with tulips, ranunculus and anemones, and then I move right the way through the season. So at the moment I've got flowers on the ground that are about to come into flower. I've got corncockle, which is a very pretty, delicate annual, but I sowed that and put it in the ground. It's overwintered successfully because it's very hardy. And I've got cornflower about to come into flower. I've got really beautiful little geums. Again, it's all the delicate flowers that you wouldn't see so much in a traditional floristry shop. Certainly not in a supermarket. So you really come to a flower farm and use British flowers for something really quite special. And then I work right the way through the seasons with peonies. I have some roses. Oh my gosh, Nigella, Calendula, Orlea, Ami, different varieties of Ami, scabious, Cosmos, many varieties of Cosmos, and masses and masses of dahlias, which is, that's my next big job on the horizon, is going to be, I overwinter some, so I think I've got about 800, 900 in the ground that I've overwintered and just covered up, and they're fine, but every 2 years I dig them up and split them. So I've got another 800, I think, to get into the ground in the next 2 or 3 weeks. So April is always a very, very busy time for a flower farmer.
And what it must be interesting is no year is the same. Like the weather, you can never really predict, can you? What's going to work?
And actually, that's a really important point. I think I've been flower farming for 13 years, and I would say it's become increasingly difficult. The flowers got more and more extreme. Obviously, as a flower farmer, I'm so aware of the weather and the weather patterns, and we're facing long periods of drought, or long periods of rain. It's very much at the extreme. That's what we're seeing, and 40 degrees heat, which we had 2 years ago. It's just not right in this country. So
it makes your job a lot harder.
It makes it so much harder.
But also, again, climate change is why it's so important to do what you're doing and to actually lead industries like floristry in the direction that you're going. Because
absolutely, well,
importing flowers seems daft when we grow so many gorgeous ones.
And it's not just about the growing; it's the way that they're grown overseas. But it is the most un-eco product that you can buy in your supermarket. Would you believe it? You think you're buying something lovely and growing, or had been growing, and it's really not at all.
Yeah. So Cissy, how do you work? Because obviously you forage. I've done a beautiful Christmas wreath workshop with you before. I was very proud of my creation. But I love the fact that you were literally like, I've just gone, and you can find, wherever you are, you find something. I just find that amazing that you can look at something
Yeah,
and go,
I feel really passionately that people should feel empowered to redefine like what is something that you can use for floristry. I think, you know, that I mean, it took me ages anyway for myself. When I was training, I was like, oh, you know, I've got to use the things that you could get on the wholesaler, or you've got to use the things that I was taught with, and I didn't have the confidence to use weeds. I love a weed. That's like actually the bit that I'm most drawn to. I quite often make the arrangements and I'm like, oh, I need to rough it up a bit and I need to go and find something from the hedgerow. I should clarify that you're not allowed to forage from the hedgerows, public land, if you're using it for commercial reasons. So I only ever forage from like land of farmers and people that have given me permission. But if you are using it for your own personal product, then you can you can feel empowered to cut things. But yeah, I just think, you know, what is something that's beautiful? I think that you know, one of the most famous florists that people often kind of quote about is Constance Spry, and when she went into Chelsea flower show, she nearly got kicked out because she deigned to use hellebores and they were regarded as weeds, whereas nowadays I think most florists like all over, you know, I think what people think of as being an acceptable ingredient has changed. But yeah, you don't have to buy it. Like, personally, I think that, you know, three stems of something cut out of the garden, or like one stem of rose, if you are lucky enough to have a garden, and bring that in on your table, is more special than just grabbing something.
You've
like
taught me a
wrap
lot
from the supermarket,
there as well, because you walked around this garden and said you can use that, and I thought, really? So I've learnt a huge amount from Cissy, particularly with shrubs and trees.
Yeah, I feel really
what you can use in floristry.
I feel really passionate especially when we do the garden to vase workshop, and people come, no matter what size your garden, or even if you're just growing on, you know, window boxes, like you can grow stuff that you can bring into your house. And I feel so passionately about making people feel brave enough to just go into their garden and be like, I don't know if it's going to work, but I'm going to have a go, and if it wilts, it wilts, but if it doesn't, great. And it can be, you know, even dandelions, like there's nothing if you can carry a dandelion seed head, get it through the wind and bring it into your house and put it, you are going to treasure that until your kid comes over and goes, but you know, but it is so beautiful. It's just reappraising what actually is beautiful.
Yeah. Well, your buttercup tablescape from
yeah.
last week looked stunning. It was absolutely beautiful. But some of these flowers are fleeting. So sweet peas, exactly. I grow sweet peas. They're gorgeous in bridal bouquets. They're gorgeous. I just love them, and having them in my kitchen on the table for a couple of days. Yeah. The scent is like nothing else, and it's got that fleeting beauty. But because it doesn't last 5 days in a vase, does that?
Well, that's what's interesting.
Mean that it's not a good cut flower? Not at all.
Well, interestingly, the gene for scent is inversely related to the gene for vase life. So flowers that are grown like on mass scale, kind of, you know, in hardcore, big commercial kind of factory-like conditions, they actually they breed out the scent because it gives the flowers longer vase life, which is why flowers you buy don't smell. So, you know, so then it you know, and so maybe someone wants a flower that's going to last in the vase for 14 days, which is great. I mean, if that's what you want, that's what you want. But also, the flowers that smell incredible won't last as long. But I think you're kind of going to, you know, going to appreciate walking into a house that smells of sweet peas, and everyone goes, oh wow, what's that smell? Or lilac or something, you know. And so it's kind of redefining what you're expecting from your flowers, I think, as well, and appreciating what it is that you're appreciating.
We could talk about the food that people get when they come here.
Yeah.
Because we always make lunches with produce grown. So last week we had a rhubarb curry, and I thought, oh my word, Cissy's just like really picked something odd here, and it was absolutely delicious. I really wondered whether I was going to be able to eat it, and it was just thoroughly delicious. So we just use what's here, and we've got
it's
asparagus,
the whole thing, isn't it?
20 ways with asparagus and April workshops.
But yeah, I think that's kind of the whole point.
This is great. So it's because actually flowers are following the food industry in that way, and that people are starting to think about the provenance of the flowers, just as they have done with food for some time. So
yeah, I liken it, if you'll forgive me my analogy, and this is in no way a dig at Delia, because Delia's an icon.
That was my first
exactly
cookbook.
But floristry training is, in the main, is like being taught by Delia Smith, which it's not a criticism, it's just her approach was, this is the recipe, get exactly what I tell you and do exactly what I tell you, and you will create a masterpiece. And you do, it's beautiful, you get a beautiful dish, but you can't deviate from the recipe. And I think that floristry teaching is that approach, which is predicated on these international supply chains, where you can go online and say, right, well, I want 100 of that, and I want 100 of that, and I want 100 of that, and then you get your recipe ingredients and they arrive and you create. The difference is that, it's a bit like when Jamie Oliver burst onto the scene and just completely redefined how we cooked. It was like, use a little bit of this, or use what's in season, and a glug of this and a bit of that. And it was that freedom to kind of be a bit more creative and a bit braver with how you designed, but it was in response to the seasons and response to the ingredients. And then I think, going even beyond that, you've kind of gone into like your Ottolenghi Test Kitchens, like your Anna Jones, people that are sort of being really creative around marrying different flavors together, and also just thinking about sustainability and how we cook and not wasting and foraging and using other things like that. And I kind of feel like, and I think we're like that and the rest of the floristry training world is still in Delia.
And I think that works so well with British flowers, because talking about the weather earlier, we have failures because of the weather. Sometimes we don't know why things haven't grown as they have done in the past. But the more open a florist is to having what is best on the day and in season, then they get the very best flowers. So I think that's just a great approach.
All of the flower as well, or branch, or whatever it is, not like you say, wasting the part of it. So we can see some lovely flowers over there at the moment, and everything is starting to grow and really
So it's the end
out.
of the tulips right now. In the polytunnels we've got some ranunculus, and I succession grow ranunculus, so I've got ranunculus starting off outside as well, because it's such a beautiful flower. So I want it to extend the season of ranunculus by growing in a poly and then outside as well. So we've right this week we are probably 2 weeks earlier than we are ordinarily. So we're late April. We've got the alliums just starting to burst open. The irises are coming. We've got anemones outside and in the polytunnel. We've got orlea, and I think the corncockle might be in time for your wedding on Monday. It's about to come into flower.
I mean, it must be exciting to see
it's lovely.
Things growing.
It really is.
And just like every day you come and you'll see something else. And
there are some flowers that seem to put on a foot overnight. I mean, it's quite amazing.
You never know quite what you're going to see when you come in every day. And then I think there's nothing nicer than wildflowers, just things growing.
So I'd say a lot of these aren't wild. That because they're properly cultivated. But later on in the season, I spend my life coming out and counting up for florist orders.
It is such a beautiful way of living, connected to the seasons, connected to the present, seeing how the years change through the year, but from year to year, and being involved also in people's most important life events. Like, it's just the most fulfilling it's not work. We get paid to just have a really great time.
I don't know. I think
yours is probably a bit more work than mine.
I think being a flower farmer might be a bit
quite
hard work, and actually you couldn't do this unless you absolutely loved it, because it can be 7 days a week.
A lot of hours.
But I think that thing of growing for important points in people's lives is wonderful. So I love growing for that very reason, both for weddings and also funerals. I think that's really, really beautiful. And people can come and walk around and select the flowers for their loved one, and it's a beautiful final gift.
I couldn't agree more, actually. And also it's so good for the soil and how you're looking after the garden, and
And this garden is teeming with wildlife. So there was a swarm of bees just 3 or 4 days ago, and we do have beehives further away on the farm, and certainly this adds to its productivity massively.
I think what's really interesting about flower farming, agroecological flower farming in this way, is that there are real strides. You know, it's not to say that like the way that flowers are grown overseas is all terrible and it's all doom and gloom and we should only buy British, but there are real strides being taken, particularly amongst Dutch growers, to kind of really kind of improve their sustainability. But I think what's really interesting is that flowers grown in that way can only ever be net zero. They can only ever not harm the environment, not produce carbon. You know, they are often grown within closed glass houses, so there's not open pollination. They're completely controlled, kind of like a factory setting to a degree. Whereas flowers grown agroecologically outside actually are biodiversity net positive, and potentially, although the research is still being done, but potentially have the ability to be net positive from carbon sequestration perspective. And you're getting more and more traditional farmers starting to wake up to the fact that, oh, actually we could incorporate flowers into our traditional crop rotation, and then we've improved our pollinators in the fields, we're improving our soil. So I actually think we're on the cusp of a really, really interesting kind of shift, sort of at a much bigger level within floristry and the cut flower sector. So literally buying flowers is good for the environment. It's like the one thing you can buy that is actually doing something good for the environment.
I mean, we all love flowers, and actually this country is renowned for being a beautiful country with gorgeous countryside and gardens. I mean, we're good at that. That should be something that we're leading the field in, I think. I mean, it is, you know, we have the perfect, you know, places like this, which I'm delighted to see you're using to its fullest, you know, most wonderful. You know, you're really benefiting the place. So thank you, Lucy, for doing that. And thank you, Cissy, for talking to us. And I honestly can't wait to show all the listeners photos of what you produce, what you create, and what you do here. It is really amazing. And we'll give all the details if people want to get involved, which I'm sure, you know, they will. Thank you.
Thank you.
Also, next time you're cooking, I come for lunch.
Yeah, I know, we should have invited you earlier. We could have given you lunch at the same time.
Sounds delicious.